Hey there, this is Vicki Arsenault, and you're listening to another episode of Facing Your Fears. Hey guys, happy day 20 of the Proverbs 31 day challenge. I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. I have gotten so many amazing lessons from even the past week since we chatted last. So it has been amazing. My Bible is fully highlighted throughout Proverbs. There's just so many good things in there. So I hope that you are enjoying this if you have been joining us. And if not, you can jump in. Even if it's day 20, it doesn't matter. We're on chapter 20. So hope that you will give us some feedback of what you have been loving and learning throughout Proverbs. You can do that over at our Facebook page, Facing Your Fears podcast. And leave us a message. Every day there's a daily prompt. You can comment below and let us know what stood out to you. Well, today I was sitting at my house watching my neighbors across the street's driveway get redone. So they have had some, tractors, bulldozers, dump trucks, all kinds of things over there to tear up the old driveway and put down the new driveway. And I was watching as they pulled out these really, really huge rocks from, under the ground, really. They've just been digging and they pulled out these huge things. And this one tractor of some sort, I don't know my heavy equipment. So anyway, bulldozer or something. It goes and picks up some of the dirt and rock from the top of the driveway, brings it down to the bottom where the dump truck is, puts it in the dump truck, goes back up and gets some more dirt and rock, carries it down, puts it in the dump truck. And they did this over and over and over and over. And I thought to myself, what a tedious, monotonous job this must be. Now, I'm sure the guy in there loves it. He probably loves heavy equipment. And so it's awesome. But me watching it, I'm just like, oh my gosh, just the same thing over and over and over. Oh, nope. Oh, thank you. Well, all of a sudden, I had this thought that I think God gave to me, which was, watching this repetitive thing happen made me think of how in our lives, sometimes we do the same things over and over and over. Now, sometimes we do them and we feel like we're getting nowhere. But every single time, we end up picking up a little bit of the dirt and rocks of our lives and bringing it away to the dump truck where it can just get left or brought to the dump or wherever it's going to go. Now, I think about it like, in one way, I think about how maybe we have these challenges that we face often, some that we bring on by ourselves. Maybe you have a temper and you catch yourself, yelling at your kids or your spouse or something. And then you think to yourself, oh, I don't know why I keep yelling. I don't want to be a yeller. And then something happens and all of a sudden you're yelling again. Well, this tractor, watching this go up and down the driveway, just made me think like each time a little bit gets taken away. And I feel like in that area of life, you're going to eventually get perfected because you have a desire to not be a yeller. And so every time you might catch yourself a little bit faster, or you might have an apology ready a lot faster. Or you might find a different way to do something. Like there's growth happening because your desire is for change, even though the same thing keeps happening. So you may not always see that there are changes happening and that you are getting smoother around the edges, but it doesn't mean it's not happening. And you may do the same thing over and over and over and over, but it doesn't mean eventually that's not going to stop. So I wanted to encourage you with that today because as that tractor went up and down, the top of the driveway became flatter and smoother. And, just in our lives, that can become a more peaceful situation as God perfects us and makes us more into His image. So it doesn't always happen overnight. Sometimes it happens over repetition. So that's a freebie for you today because that's just something that I saw and it just kind of spoke to me. I know several times in my life I've revisited the same sin over and over and over, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this, God. I don't know why I keep doing the things I don't want to do. But eventually all of those things sort of passed away, the ones that I'm thinking of. I'm sure I have a multitude more that I don't have perfected yet. But and also sometimes you think maybe just in your daily life you're just doing the same stuff over and over, the same routine: get up, have breakfast, go to work, come home, make dinner, watch your TV show, go to bed. You might do the same thing over and over and feel like nothing's getting accomplished, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's true. Stuff is always happening behind the scenes. So just wanted to encourage you with that today. All right. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was Samson, because I think that this can be a real faith builder for us. There are quite a few different things that happen in the story of Samson, which you can go read in Judges chapter 13 through 16. It's an amazing story. So you'll want to head over and read that for yourself and see what your takeaways are. Because I have a few different takeaways, but I'm going to talk about one takeaway today. Because last week I talked a little bit about our superpowers that we have. Now, Samson had what I would like to call a superpower. Like, really, it was a God-given gift, but I'm just calling it superpower for fun. So God gave Samson this amazing strength. The whole deal was he can't cut his hair. It was sort of like it was an act of obedience, and by his obedience of not cutting his hair, he still had God's strength. Now, I think that Samson let this go to his head a little bit. I don't know. I mean, from reading the story, I kind of feel like he got away with a lot because he was strong. Like the first thing he tells his parents, he's like, I want to marry that woman, and she's a Philistine, and he's like, get her for me. First of all, that's just rude. But anyway, side note. Anyway, so he, a little bit demanding, but I mean, really, who's going to argue with him? He's huge and strong, and, I don't know. Anyway, I will move on from that. So he has this amazing strength, and there's this agreement that he won't cut his hair, and he will have the strength that God gives him so that the work that God gave to get done will get done. Well, what happens, I'm going to skip around the story a little bit, is that he ends up marrying a Philistine woman, Delilah, and the Philistines are the enemy. And so they are always trying to figure out how to bring Samson down. And so they go to Delilah and tell her, hey, we're going to give you some money if you can tell us how or where your husband gets his strength, or teach us what his weakness is so that we can take him down. So she goes ahead to betray him and keeps asking Samson over and over, what will make you weak? What will make you weak? And then he gives her something that will make him weak. She tries it. And then, of course, she's like, oh, the Philistines are coming. And they come and they try to take him. And, of course, he breaks through everything because he hasn't told her the truth of what his weakness is. And so she's like, you're making fun of me. You say you love me, but you're not. You just make fun of me all this time. Well, first of all, she's his wife. So why, on one hand, you're like, okay, why would you want to take your husband down? But then again, you're like, well, you're a Philistine, and you probably maybe she didn't want to be married to him in the first place. Who knows? So I don't know. But what I do know is that eventually he ended up telling her the secret. And so his hair got cut off and he lost all his strength, right? So he broke that relationship between him and God. So he lives with weakness for, I don't know how long the Philistines kept him, but eventually his hair grew back. I don't know if they had shaved it for a while or if it just grew back eventually and they never thought, oh, hey, hair grows. So I don't know what the story was there. But anyway, toward the end of the story, his hair grows back, and the Philistines want to go put Samson on display in this big Colosseum or whatever with like 3,000 people in it. And he asked them to put him between these two pillars that are basically holding up, a really good foundation of this whole Colosseum. And he ends up turning to God and saying, hey, please, come back to me. Let me do this one more thing for you, kind of thing, repenting. And his strength comes back and he ends up knocking down the whole thing and killing all the people, including himself. Okay, fun, happy story, right? All right, this is what I'm saying though. I think that God has given each of us a superpower. What I'm calling a superpower, right? We each have the strengths. I know I talked about this last time. I've talked about this a lot of times because I think it's so important for us to remember that we have these strengths. And when we are in that relationship with God and we're using those strengths for his glory and for the reason that he intended, then everything goes well. And sometimes we get a little distracted. I mean, maybe you have a gift that brings you fame and fortune and, just a whole different lifestyle that you never even thought of. And so sometimes you might get distracted from what God actually wanted you to use that gift for. I think that's what happened with Samson. And I think that we can come back and turn to God again and say, wait, these are your gifts and I want to use them for your glory. Nothing else matters except for you and what you want me to use these gifts for. So when it comes to your own superpowers, ask yourself these questions. What am I good at? What do I enjoy? What brings me joy? What is it that gets me excited to get out of bed in the morning and look forward to doing? Or, what are some things that everybody compliments you on? I know people have complimented you before. And so what are those things they compliment you for? Because it's very likely that those things that you like, that you enjoy, that bring you peace and that people compliment you on are your God-given gifts. It's stuff that becomes so naturally to you that you don't even recognize it as a gift because it seems normal. And I know I've talked about that before. Now, on the other side of this, I want to think about Superman. So Superman had all the strength, but when he was around kryptonite, his strength was gone. So what is the kryptonite that saps you of all your strength or all of your gifts? Is it insecurity? Is it fear of the unknown? Fear of success? What is it that when you get close to it, you all of a sudden have no strength to do what it is God told you to do? I want you to just think about that for a little bit and really take the time to process that, because I feel like when you can recognize what your kryptonite is, then you're going to be able to overcome it a lot more easily or avoid it altogether and keep your eyes focused on what God has you doing with your gifts and talents that he's given you. Now for Samson, I'm not sure whether his kryptonite was Delilah, whether it was ego, whatever it was, he broke the relationship that he had with God. And his hair was cut off and he lost all of his strength. But he ended up turning back to God. And I think that is really, really cool. So that's one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot when looking through Samson. And I just am curious, what some of your takeaways are. So if you saw something else in this story that you'd like to share, please feel free to message me at coach@vickyarsenault.com. And I also want to throw out there to you that if you have a question or a thought or a topic or something you would like me to talk about on this podcast, maybe one day you'd even like to be a guest with me, that would be amazing. Then just go ahead and send me a message at coach@vickyarsenault.com. And if you leave a question, maybe your question will be answered and maybe it will become an episode. Wouldn't that be cool, right? And if you want your name mentioned, your first name or where you're from or something like that mentioned on the podcast, that's awesome as well. But I would really love to, just hear what your thoughts are. If you've been listening to this podcast, I really just want to build your faith. And maybe sometimes I might repeat a few things because I just think it's so important, and that's what God has given me this week to talk to you about. So hopefully every time you hear something from a podcast here, it speaks to your spirit and it helps you to grow and to evolve into the person that God has created you to be. So I want you to channel your inner Samson this week and think about your strengths, right? Think about what they are. And also think about what it is that saps you of your strength. And then that way we can either avoid it or find ways to overcome it. So thank you for joining me today. Have an excellent week. I'm looking forward to talking to you next week. Bye.